Hi, everyone. Welcome to Be Well Rebellion podcast, episode 2. And this one's about men and women. And I don't really want to necessarily talk about the difference between men and women because we can all examine that in our own lives, and we can talk about that because I think people talk about that enough. But what I actually want to talk about today is the difference between men and women and males and females. I actually feel like males and females and men and women are totally different species. Okay, so when I think back to the Bible, in Genesis day 4, the moon was created, and I think about the Bible and how I love the Bible. Don't get me wrong, I refer to it a lot, I read it a lot, and I just like to question everything I read, though. It's kind of how I was raised. So I think about the Bible and with regard to like the ancient Sumerian text, that said like the God of the Old Testament is actually Enlil, like the warlord type of the creator gods. And then I've also read in the Nag Hammadi texts something that kind of made me think that Yaldabaoth, the son of Sophia, was also referred to as like the God of the Old Testament. So I have some confusion there. But ultimately what I understand is that there was some kind of like inverted second-rate patriarch, right? That kind of colonized the population here on Earth. And its goal was to ultimately like invert and distort masculine and feminine energy. And so it has successfully done that in a lot of situations. Like a lot of instances, you can see how imbalanced our world is. We have such a chasm between men and women that it almost seems insurmountable sometimes, because many of us are just saying, screw it, I just want to be alone. Like I'm divorced and I think about remarrying. Like I love the idea of remarrying, but the idea of dating kind of just makes me recoil. Like I want nothing to do with that. And the reason is because it seems to be that both the population of men and the population of women has been infiltrated by a demographic of males and females. And these males and females, they don't operate with the same like hermeneutical frameworks and operating system as these men and women. So if you think about I like to imagine, what is a wise union of man and woman? What does that divine feminine and divine masculine energy coming together look like? There's a concept called Hieros Gamos, and I think that refers to the union of the man and woman, the divine masculine and the divine feminine, and the worlds that they can birth together. So if you think about the yin being the receiver and the yang being like the doer, you are constantly enjoying a feedback loop of communication between you and the Most High through your prayers. You ask for guidance, and then you operate in the physical realm accordingly, right? So ultimately that guidance, that spiritual guidance, is not submitting to the physical doer, and the physical doer isn't just submitting to the spiritual guidance. They're working together. And I think that not only do we need to facilitate that within ourselves, but we also need to kind of strive for that outside of ourselves. I hear a lot of discussion about, it should be women submitting to men or a man submitting to a woman. I really just think that's such a stupid conversation, because it needs to be a mutual thing. I think that when it comes to a divine partnership, the submission, you can imagine they're getting into a vehicle together, like a car together, to drive somewhere. And they both submit to getting in the vehicle. That's a submission, okay? And then she's having all these body responses, like, to her environment, because her womb is tethered to this realm. So she is picking up on all kinds of patterns and all kinds of aspects of existence. Whether she's conscious of it or not, her body is receiving the lessons of it, the information of it. So then it's his job to drive the vehicle with her navigation tool. Like if he's paying attention to her and he's studying her, whether she's conscious of her responses or not, he can get so much information and then walk with the wise, you know. But he has to be willing to recognize that she's an oracle in that sense, which is kind of hard to admit if you're thinking about like a female, because like I truly feel like these females are just so anti women. Also, they're also misogynists essentially, because they're rejecting wisdom. But these females, they make you, I can imagine many men not wanting to submit to these females in any way. Divine femininity, divine feminine is not her sitting around and like getting pampered while he's working his ass off. That's just not the sustainable dynamic, you know? Her role is to foster life. So if he gives her a safe space, if she needs to melt or if she needs to rage or whatever, like that's a safe space to do it, but then she gotta rebound back to a state of being a conduit and a steward of life. So what I'm getting at is like, imagine this situation. So like a woman says, I want flowers. Okay, so like her husband's like, I want to make my wife happy, I'm gonna get her flowers. So he like cuts all these flowers outside and he puts them in a vase and he brings them to her and he's like, here are the flowers, just like you asked for. And she's like, thanks. And he's like, well, what you asked for flowers and I got you flowers. And she's like, well, I mean, like, these are lilies and I really like roses. He's like, how was I supposed to know that? Well, I mean, like, these flowers are really just they're beautiful and thank you so much for the effort. They're just gonna sit on the kitchen table and die in like a week or two. And so she feels unheard. He feels unappreciated. Meanwhile, she wanted him to build her a garden and she wanted to grow the flowers. You know, he has to create a safe space, but it's not just a safe space for her to sit there. It's a safe space for her to foster life. So then it's up to her to do her part at that point and get her yang in the game too. You know? Because sometimes the women fulfill the yang also. There's a give and take and a listen and a do. You know, like when I'm in my garden, I'm the yanger. You know, like I'm the yang in my garden. I watch her grow. I see her wisdom. And then I tend to it so that I create a safe place for my plants to not feel stressed. So I create a safe place for my garden to flourish. And I see how it grows. And the different weeds tell me about the environment. And the different pests tell me about the environment. Like, I learn so much. But if I wasn't watching and if I was just going like, oh, time to pull weeds, and I'm just pulling weeds without any wisdom, I might have very well pulled my healthiest fruiting plant that was a volunteer plant that I didn't plant, and because it wasn't in my plan for the spring, I didn't recognize that that was a volunteer plant from the previous season that was going to really thrive. And instead I was like, this doesn't belong here, get it out of here. Do you know what I'm saying? So, like, you really have to employ the nuance of wisdom and the subjectivity of the situations so that you can act accordingly. And that's so important when it comes to partnerships too. Like, she gotta feel safe so that she can be the oracle and she can give all this information through her body responses, and then he can listen to it and he can like guide them accordingly. That's kind of how it works. But instead we have males and females, and they're not trusting each other, they're checking each other's phones, they're hiding money from each other, they're hiding other, you know, partnerships from each other. They're just absolutely diabolical to each other. They're just doing each other so dirty. And it's hard too, because sometimes you're a conscious man or woman, but you're on your own like humble stumble path of healing. So maybe for some reason you're attracted to somebody that's not like your best, maybe not your best partner, but it's something you need to visit while you're growing or whatever. So you might partner with a male or a female, and you might think that they're like on the same path or working with the same program that you are of like righteousness and wisdom, and then they do something that reveals themselves and you're just like cringing. Or maybe you're not, or maybe you're just kind of that's a red flag kind of thing. But I promise you, if you are a conscious man or woman and you're partnered with a basic male or female that's out to just like do the dirty stuff, there's an expiration date on that, because you're just not going to live in the same world. One of you is going to drag the other one down. Or what would be nicer is if the other one, pulled the other one up, but that's so rare. That's so rare, because we get dragged down all the time in a way that's like not our choice, but then we end up like we can't, if somebody's gonna pull us up, we really do have to make the choice to join them there. So it's the likelihood that one partner pulls the other one down is generally more likely than the other way. But I guess I'm just getting at I don't feel like everybody here is the same kind of human. I've been studying like bloodlines and haplogroups, and apparently there are some demographics of the population that are just really actually not biologically capable of empathy, or maybe there are some that are just not biologically capable of that internal monologue, we're discovering that there are people that don't have the same capabilities. We're not all the same. And that's really interesting to consider, because it feels like the males and females consist of this one demographic that's like not ordained in a sense. And then this other demographic that's really big, that's like NPCs. And so NPCs can be, they run programs. They can do it because they are holographic people. I don't know. I'm sure there's some situations where people that we think are there are actually just holograms. But then there are also people who are NPCs that I think are real people, but they've experienced some kind of trauma-induced soul loss, either partial or full. And I think Chinese medicine even talks about that, like the spirit like separating from the blood or whatever. But anyway, those NPCs, like I think that they're just programmed to behave that way. So is there hope for them? I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I think there's hope for some of them. I definitely used to be some kind of dipshit, like NPC to some degree, Matrix lady. That used to be me. I used to be like that also, till I went through some things that woke me up to some very important things, right? But yeah, there were ways that I was also an NPC, but I don't think I ever could have gotten programmed into the kind of debauchery or diabolical sex and behaviors and recklessness that these males and females seem to be falling for. So I really wonder about the nature of them. But anyway, I think you can probably see it too if you are like navigating the dating world. There seem to be some people that look like regular men and women, but that are just running some really, really destructive programs. And so I guess I'm just gonna stay single until the right man falls from the sky into my garden. But you know what I mean. You gotta be careful out there, because if you're a man and you choose the wrong woman, she could like, ruin your life, ruin your finances. I'm sure she could speak death into you. A lot of women speak death into their partners. I would say a lot of females speak death into their partners. That's really sad. If you're a woman and you're looking for a partner, you could potentially choose, your own demise, because some men are dangerous, and and the dangerous ones present the same way as the non-dangerous ones, right? The safe ones. They kind of present the same way a lot of times. So you have to have discernment, you have to pray, and make sure, I mean, my friend Rob, he was always saying that, like, he thinks a lot of people are married to and having children with, like, demonic entities, and I kind of think there's some validity to that. Because even if you are a good person and you're running a program that's taking the place of, like, your soulful, wise approach to life, like, you're obviously, and your soul has pulled back and recoiled from your vessel a little bit. Something else is taking its place. You're not just driving with nobody in the driver's seat. You're not just going. Something else is affecting you. And, you know, like I've mentioned the egregores before, they're thought forms that have so much collective energy that they take on a life of their own. You really have to be cognizant of what kind of thought forms and egregores you want to allow to shape your program that you're running when it comes to your interpersonal relationships. That's such an intimate thing that if you're running programs like, oh, I hate all men, or if you're running programs like, I need to just take advantage of him for his money, or if you're running programs where it's like, women bring nothing to the table, like, that's going to affect your interpersonal relationships. So just, you know, think about that and don't fall for just anybody. I don't know. Anyway, that's that for today. Just really wanted to throw it out there that I think that men and women are a different demographic than males and females. What are your thoughts? Because there are some behaviors going on out there that are becoming commonplace that I could never, ever participate in. I could never imagine. And I think that it's gotten to the point where the collective has become so infiltrated that if you say, like, the words men and women, a lot of the times people reduce those labels to the behaviors of males and females. And there's a whole different collective, you know? It's almost like when you say food these days, you want real food, like you gotta say, like, organic real food, and you gotta specify. It's kind of like these days, I don't want to date males, I'm looking for a man, you know? Like, I need to skip over that male behavior, that inversion, distorted energy where it doesn't really help anybody involved. So anyway, signing off, just popping on to share that. What are your thoughts? Do you think that males and females can level up to men and women? Do you think men and women can kind of get degraded to behaving like males and females if they've been traumatized enough? Or do you think they're just whole different species with different goals and maybe belong in different worlds? Anyway, much love, everybody. Have a great day.